Welcome to Try Not to Overthink It, where we explore the intricate landscape of mental health, well-being, and everyday life. I'm RJ.
I'm Khalil.
Join us as we dive into insightful conversations, share expert perspectives, and personal stories that shed light on the various dimensions of mental wellness. Whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or deeper understanding of the human mind, this podcast is your safe space to engage, learn, and navigate the journey to a happier, healthier self. If you're new to the channel, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification button so you won't miss out on whatever topic that we're discussing. So today we are talking about the subject of moving on from your past. This is a very important one because for a lot of us, we are shaped by our past. We are shaped by the things that we have survived. We have, and for a lot of us, most importantly, for a lot of us, we tend to continue to live in the past and allow the past to continue to shape and to mold our present as well as our future. So I thought it was important for us to kind of unpack this topic. Because again, when I have clients sitting on my in my office or sitting on my couch, or I'm doing individuals or groups with them, a lot of them talk about things that happened to them and how the things that happened to them have caused them to be where they are presently. And as I tell them all the time, for me as a provider, it's important that, as Khalil's always talking about, being mindful, and being mindful means being focused on your present, because you can't change your past. But that's easier said than done. And so I thought it was important for us to kind of unpack that topic today. What do you think, Khalil?
Hey, everybody, and I'm very grateful to be on here this morning. The topic really stretches us when it comes to moving forward and focusing on what we're doing in the present moment, because the past can contribute, and it can contribute to some mental health issues, but it also can impact or hinder the way we view ourselves, the way we view others, and the way we view our environment. Right. When we talk about unpacking something traumatic that happens to someone, sometimes clinicians encourage you to delve into your past, right? And they want to know, what were your thoughts around that traumatic situation, right? What made you start to view yourself, your environment, or other people in a certain way, right? So if I, was a youngster and I, was abused physically, sexually as a child, right? I might view my environment as untrustworthy, right? Or people as untrustworthy, right? Because as a child, I saw this happen, and I saw it happen even if it's just one time. But if I saw it happen constantly, it would have reinforced the idea that, hey, even people who I trust, or people who are close to me, people who are related to me, right, are unsafe, or they only want me for a certain reason. Maybe it's to take their anger out, or sexual pleasure, whatever it is, right? That would impact my view on society, the society around me, some of the people around me, right? Might cause some paranoia, right? And myself and RJ, we've actually seen this working at the mental health center. You'll see people that have been impacted by trauma and abuse, and they're very untrustworthy of their environment. Even clinicians and doctors, right? They'll be untrustworthy of those people, or they won't trust them. And it will almost seem as if they were paranoid, or they had a paranoid personality type, or they had some schizophrenic qualities, right? Where their paranoia was overtaking them. RJ probably remember, we had one lady, and she was a local lady, and I think I told you this story, RJ. I went to her house, and she had all the blinds and everything covered up, and newspaper was on everything, and like she had all these signs saying "get out" and "stay away." Well, talking to her, I was able to see, like, she had a traumatic upbringing, a traumatic marriage, right? Her and her husband were constantly always fighting and beating each other up, and just how she grew up, and that shaped her view on society and how she
Mhm.
saw other people. Right? She didn't trust people. People are not to be trusted, and that was her thoughts around that. Right? And so she started to exhibit these symptoms and signs that looked like she was schizophrenic, but she wasn't. Right? Society did that to her. Right? People did that to her. So it is important to address the past, right? But we don't dwell in it. and we don't live in it, because that's already happened. You can't change it. But what you can change is your trajectory moving forward, right? You can change what happens from now on forward. And that's the positivity that you get by going to a therapist, right? That's the hope you get by going to a clinician who has studied past trauma, who have studied, family dysfunction, right? They'll be able to help you get through this. And I know everybody's trauma history is different, and people who grew up in dysfunctional families didn't necessarily get abused, but it could have been more mental or emotional abuse, right? And that affects how we have relationships with other people, right? What we view as normal might be dysfunctional to society, right? You're in a relationship, and every time your spouse gets home, you're going through your spouse's phone,
Yeah.
right? You searching through their clothes, right? And obviously, if this is something that you saw as normal growing up, when you have a spouse who didn't live like that or go through that, they're going to be like, "What's wrong with this person? Right? Why are they so insecure?" Right? So, past plays a significant part in what we do now. But if we dwell in the past, right, and we can't move forward, it's going to impact us, because people will not want to stay in a relationship with somebody who's overly controlling, someone who's overly suspicious, someone who's verbally abusive. All that dysfunction you might have learned in your past that you brought in your current relationship, right, will cause that relationship to spiral and to break down, right? So I know I went all over the board to kind of answer that, but the past, yes, is important, but it can't dictate what you do moving forward. And that brings us to resilience, right? I think that's the perfect word to use for what RJ's talking about, right? Are we going to be resilient to be able to move forward?
So I agree with everything you just said. I think that for a lot of us, I think it's important to acknowledge the past, because you can't just pretend it didn't happen. There's no amount of wishing and hoping that's going to undo the past or what you experienced or what you survived or what you made it through. So you always have to acknowledge your past, because your past, as I tell people all the time, if you've lived long enough, you survived something. There's no way that you've made it through life up to this point and did not survive something. And in surviving, you have the ability to learn and lean on those lessons learned. Because again, I tell people all the time, either you win or you learn. We get caught up, especially in today's society, we get caught up on keeping track of wins versus losses.
Right.
If I don't win, I didn't lose. I got an opportunity to learn. I got an opportunity to grow. I got an opportunity to mature and to flourish and develop from whatever it was that didn't go my way this time. Because if it didn't kill me, it gives me the opportunity to get stronger because I learned from it.
Right.
And for a lot of people, myself included, that's something that's easier said than done. It's easier said, to look on the bright side of things, to hunt the good stuff, as a coworker used to say all the time. But it is one of those things that you have to kind of relearn and unlearn certain maladaptive behaviors, because for a lot of us, we will dwell and we will get quagmired in the negativity. Something didn't go my way, or this happened to me. And then because this happened to me or something didn't go my way, I tend to get stuck, because again, I'm just focused on the what ifs, but as I tell people all the time, you can't hit shots you never take. And, I have a tattooed on my arm where it says fortune favors the bold. At some point in time, you have, in order to have things that you've never had before, you got to be willing to do things you've never done. And so sometimes that takes stepping out of where you are and being willing to risk it, being willing to gamble, being willing to let go of your past, and being willing to step forward into your future. One of the things my grandfather used to say is that where you are now is a reflection of your past thoughts and thinking. So if you want to change your future, you have to be willing to change your thoughts that you're having. And then not only change your thoughts, but then also put forth the action in order to achieve what you want for yourself. And for me, I tell my clients that all the time. Most things that are going on with us, they start here. They start inside of your mind. The way that you think about things, the way you perceive things, the way you receive things starts here. So a lot of times you have to change your mindset. You have to change the things that you are exposed to. You have to change the things that you are experiencing, and even sometimes the environment. Because it's not until you start to change the things that are coming in here inside of your mind that affect your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, that you will not see the change external around you. Because it's not, as I tell people all the time, change has to come from within before it comes from without.
Right.
And so for a lot of us, we have to, when we move into different phases of our lives, take stock of the things that do us good and take stock of the things that do us bad. And by taking stock of the things that do us good, we keep those things. And in taking stock of the things that do us bad, we eliminate those things. We subtract those things from us. Because as I tell my clients all the time, they always laugh when I say this, but I was like, when you live your life by the basic principles of math, you will always be successful. The basic principles of math to solve any mathematical equation: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Those four principles, those same four basic principles, allow you to solve pretty much any mathematical equation there is. So things that, the opposite of addition is subtraction, and the opposite of multiplication is division.
Mm-hmm.
Two of those things increase, whereas two of those things take away.
Right.
So if things do not add and multiply in your life, it's time to subtract and divide them away. Because again, they're taking away from you. They're taking away from your greatness. And I always tell people, you have the ability to be great. One thing that I feel that for a lot of us we struggle with, and that is grace and mercy for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to forgive yourself and others, and let go of the resentment to free yourself. Because as long as you're hanging on to the negativity, you're hanging on to the unforgiveness, you're hanging on to the being upset, the disappointment, the anger, the frustration, guess what? You're shackled like a prisoner. Mm-hmm. You are being weighed down, and you are a prisoner to your past pains, your past hurts, your past disappointments, your past frustrations. And guess what? That situation or those people that those feelings are associated with or attached to have control over you.
Right.
Nobody controls me. And because nobody controls me, I refuse. I will tell myself that no matter who I'm in front of, what's going on, somebody gets me that mad, to check that negative thought before it becomes something else, because thoughts become actions if you don't control them. Mm-hmm. To check that negative thought, I say to myself out loud, so the other person can hear me, I will not allow this person to ruin my day. And for a lot of us, by not giving ourselves that forgiveness, not giving ourselves that grace, not giving others that forgiveness or that grace, it traps us in that snapshot of time. Mm-hmm. That will not allow us to transcend to that next phase or that next level or that next point in life, which again, as Khalil was alluding to earlier, it impacts our present relationships. Because I've been in relationships with people where you could clearly tell they're reliving their past relationships in our current relationship.
Right.
And the slightest thing that I did reminded them of something somebody else did. And so then I'm getting the punishment, or I'm having to pay for a meal I never ate.
Right.
And so I would have to have, because I believe in giving everybody one free one. I would have to have that conversation like, hey, I didn't do those things to you. So because I didn't do those things to you, as the man of the present, I'm not paying for the crimes of the man of the past. Right. And so if we're going to continue to be in each other's lives, be in this space, continue to do whatever it is that we're doing, that has to die. Because you're not going to continue to blame me for something that I didn't do, because it reminds you or it triggers you in this way. Like if you're that traumatized, you're that triggered, you're that beholden to all of that, like there might need to be some therapy that needs to go on there, because again, hurt people. Mm-hmm. And so for a lot of us, if we do not, as Khalil spoken to this very thing in several episodes, if the things that you do not choose to better or to get rid of, you're choosing for it to become a permanent fixture in your life. Mm-hmm. So either you can choose to release those feelings or release that animosity, release that anger, release that hurt, that frustration, or you're choosing to always live in it and wear it like a jacket.
And I know the difficulties that come, especially somebody like myself, right? Um, uh, Being in recovery, having to go to treatment, having to, be in several therapy sessions per week, and really having to dig in to why my behaviors weren't matching up with my views, right? That they didn't align with my values, right? It didn't align with my convictions, my morals, the things I was doing, right? It's because the thought that I had in my mind was I wasn't worth certain things, right? And I didn't have the value on my life, on myself, right? I didn't love myself, right? The reason why is because of all the stuff I had been through and the stuff I had done, right? Um, it was very hard for me to talk to somebody about the negative things that I had done in the past, uh, because it brought a lot of guilt and shame, right? I think it's the Dr. Gabor Mate talks about that, the relationship with guilt we have, right? Coming up as a kid, your parents tell you not to do something, you do something, and it blows up in your face, and then they always bring it up, and you feel so guilty and shameful that, oh man, I did that, and I have to own that, right? So after that, we have this really strange relationship with letting people down or doing something, right? That we feel is negative because we were brought up to believe it was negative, and that relationship with guilt and shame holds us hostage, right? So in the future, you deal with people, and no matter if the relationship's good or bad, and next thing you know, we're constantly trying to meet this standard for people, and when
Mm-hmm.
we don't meet it, right, we feel guilty. Like, oh man, I didn't meet this expectation. I let these people down, right? And I let myself down. And next thing you know, you're trapped in this cycle of this negative thinking, right? Well, I'm not a good person. Well, I didn't graduate with everybody else, with my peers, right? I dropped out of college, right? I lost my job. I got divorced, so I'm a horrible person. Nobody wants me, right? Like, you might not be verbalizing it, but inside, this is going on internally, RJ. I'm speaking from experience because I've had all those things happen to me, right? And I was talking to myself through all of these things, and I felt so guilty, so shameful. I'm not a good dad. I'm not taking care of my child the way I'm supposed to, right? So all these negative things that are going on in my head, like RJ said, if it's up here, that battlefield's in your mind. Well, soon cognitive behavioral theory tells us, right? Your behaviors change, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has to align with the way I'm thinking. So I'm walking around feeling hopeless, not worthy of love, and not feeling that I can give love, right?
Absolutely.
So the whole time I'm spiraling down out of
Mm-hmm.
control, right? And that brings us to the back to the topic of resilience, right? When you go through something like that, and then you get around people, like I said, I went to treatment, I had some good therapists, and you get around people who are going to enlighten you and make
Mm-hmm.
you more self-aware, and you start noticing things, right, that you want to change about yourself, right? And that really you were allowing these negative situations and circumstances to impact your thinking. It makes you want to take ownership, right? The one good thing I did with therapists I'll never forget was really they wanted to see how I perceived my locus of control, some of the
Mm-hmm.
things that were in my power to change how I perceived it, right? And we did a test, and I'll never forget it because, I learned about that later on as I went through my master's program, different tests they do. And I learned that I really did not think I could change certain outcomes, right? I really didn't think that it was in my power to change certain outcomes. Let me say it like that. The longer I remained sober and the longer I remained in therapy, I was able to challenge that the irrational thought process. And I realized, man, I was choosing to live like this. I had a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I had a choice to change it the whole time. I had a choice to do some different things. I had a choice to make better decisions, right? These were things that I had to learn from going to therapy, getting some mental health help, right? Talking to people who were actually doing the things I wanted to do. We always talk about that, right? If you don't see it, it's very hard to be it, right? I had to get around some people who were being successful, and I'd say,
Yep.
hey, how did you do this?
Mm-hmm.
And I started meeting people who actually came from the same background I had been through some worse stuff, and they were resilient, right? Resilience, and I'm gonna read off the definition because I think it's the example for everything we're talking about, like the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties, right? I could not come back quickly, right? At any time. I know when I had some really rough times, I couldn't come back quickly, right? But the longer I fought and the longer I withstood some of these challenges, right, the quicker I would bounce back,
Yeah.
right? It took me some time to build the resilience.
Mm-hmm.
The first couple times you get knocked down, you have a bad divorce, you have a bad breakup, you lose your job, it might take you some time to bounce back. But the quicker, but the harder you work at it, the quicker it becomes. It's easier to bounce back from you. You build the resilience. So other challenges you have are not going to knock you on your butt and keep you there. It ain't going to be a knockout blow, right? You're going to withstand that blow and you're going to be able to fight back. But you're going to have to put yourself around people who are going to build you up, encourage you, people who aren't going to allow you to be stuck, right? Because that current circumstance doesn't dictate who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn that no matter what happened in the past, that didn't define who I was. I still had morals, values, and convictions. I still wanted to be something different than I was at that current time, right? And so I started lining up my thinking with my actions, right? All right, I want to be a better father. Well, that means you're going to have to spend time with your child. Just because you send child support payments don't mean nothing. I had to spend time with my child, right? I had to make that, and I put the onus on me. I had to make that happen. I had to reach out to my ex-wife. I had to have conversations with her, right? I had to talk to her while she was with her new man. You know what I'm saying? I had to humble myself, right? I had to have conversations with people who I might not have really wanted to talk to at the time, right? I had to go out and work jobs that I might not have really wanted to work at that time. But that humbling process helped me build the resilience, right? There were some things I had to do that were uncomfortable. And the quicker that you humble yourself, the quicker you'll get through that circumstance, that situation, that's horrible to you in the moment. But when you're able to think not just about how you'll look in that little space and time, like, man, I'm gotta go beg these people for a job, man, or damn, I gotta call this person who I really don't mess with because I need some help today, right? But when you start doing those things and you start applying yourself, all right, at building that resilience, to be able to withstand and to come back from some sort of adversity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Easier it becomes. And I have clients that, man, they fight with that humility, right? It's okay to say, hey, you know what? I messed up, but that doesn't define me. That's not who I am. I can come back from this. And that's a hard thing to do. But if you're not willing to humble yourself, you're not willing to be honest, open-minded, it's going to be real tough for you to come back from something, and you will be stuck in the past because you're not doing what it takes to get out of that mindset.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, as you talked about before, embracing the change, being willing to be stretched and pulled and put into situations that are uncomfortable or unfamiliar. For us as human beings, we tend to travel the path of least resistance. We stick to what we know. We stick to what we're used to. If you were to take someone to McDonald's, they have especially if they eat McDonald's, they have a regular item that they will get from the menu. If you take somebody, and put them in a city, they will tell you that there are certain gas stations that they go to, because I like the gas over here, or I can do this, or I can do that. We tend to shy away from change, but in order to overcome your past and free yourself from your past, you have to embrace that change. You have to wake up every single day and look at every single day when your alarm clock goes off, or if you're one of those people that doesn't need an alarm clock. When you open your eyes and you swing your legs out the bed, that is the opportunity for you to start over because it's a brand new day. What
Mm.
happened yesterday does not have to bleed over into today. You have an opportunity to be a brand new you, start over fresh every single day. But as Khalil alluded to, you have to put forth the effort, you have to put forth the work. Like people talk about muscle memory.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as muscle memory because your muscles have no brain. They do not retain anything. What happens is you have neural pathways that are tied to an activity.
Right.
The more you do things, it strengthens that neural pathway, which then allows you to be able to complete that task. So things like riding a bike, that's why you can ride a bike. You can learn how to ride a bike at 4 or 5, not ride a bike for 15 years and be able to hop on it and be able to do it.
Yep.
Some skills we do not are not they're not perishable, like walking. You once you learn how to walk, someone doesn't have to teach you how to walk every single day. Someone doesn't have to teach you how to drive a car every single day. You know how to do things. Where people get frozen and they get stuck is they fear the possibility of failing.
Right.
Anytime you do anything, there is going to be the possibility of failing, but failure should not keep you frozen in place and should not keep you from at least trying, because you can learn where you need to improve from failing. You can learn where you need to be better from failing. You can learn where you were deficient at through failing. But again, you have to have that self-compassion and be willing to be kind to yourself as you're going through this process of healing. As I was telling one of my interns at work the other day, because I can tell, she's doing this assignment and she's interacting with, somebody for the assignment, and she's super nervous, and so like I told her, the only way you're going to get better is to practice. Practice doesn't breed perfect. Practice breeds confidence. You can execute things much more flawlessly when you are confident you can do the thing versus just expecting and me just expecting you to be able to do something and you've never done it before. So as I told her, we're going to practice, and by practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing, it becomes second nature to you. Like walking, you can get out the bed and you don't have a doubt in your mind you're going to be able to walk from your bed to the bathroom when you wake up every morning, because you know you can do that. So when it comes to change, you, as Khalil said, you have to put forth the effort in order to see the change occur. Sometimes it's physical effort, meaning you have to stop surrounding yourselves with certain people, meaning you got to change your environment, meaning that you got to stop being around certain activities. But then also some changes have to occur in here where you have to put forth the thought process like, God dang, how do I keep ending up in the same spot? Because you keep doing the same things.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll never forget, I was watching an episode of My Expert Opinion on YouTube, and Matt Hoffa had a guy in there in the barbershop. If anybody who doesn't know, watch his, subscribe to his channel as well, because they have some good insight in there sometimes. And so he was interviewing a guy, and their whole setup is in a barbershop, and they're having barbershop conversations that we all have. If you've ever gotten your hair cut and you sitting in there waiting to get your hair cut, there are conversations that pop off. So they're having a conversation. The man was talking about being a predicate felon and how he kept getting caught with a gun. He's a felon getting caught with a gun. And so his mindset was, if I can't take my gun in with me, then I ain't going.
Right.
But then one day, after getting caught this last time, he had to recognize, why am I going to places where I even need a gun?
Right.
So maybe I need to stop going to places where I need a gun, and I won't get a charge for getting caught with a gun. And so when he had that foresight and that insight to recognize, change my environment, changes other behaviors, which then keeps me from having negative consequences, it's like the light went off for him. And I mean, that was very profound, but that's very applicable to other people and other facets of their life. Because for a lot of us, we will find ourselves in certain situations and certain places and certain spaces because our mindset is one track.
Yeah.
Not realizing that if we just tweaked one or two different things, we'd get different outcomes. Instead of going right, we go left. But for a lot of us, what we tend to do is we tend to not want to embrace the change, not want to embrace the grind, because that means I got to give something up. That
Right.
means I got to give somebody up. That means I got to not do the things that I'm comfortable doing. That means doing the things that look right instead of just sound right.
Right.
Because there's a difference between something looking right versus something that actually is right. And for a lot of us, we like Khalil was alluding to, there were things that he had to do differently, that weren't just on the surface level. They looked like the right thing to do, but they actually were the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you find yourself in the same spots at the same time all the goddamn on time, there's some reevaluation. It may not be everyone else. And I had that conversation with, I was having this conversation with one of the nurses that works for me, where I had to explain to her, a lot of times you have to just let people see that it's not everyone else. Sometimes it's them.
It's you. Right.
It's not this person dislikes me because of my hair. They dislike me because of my weight, or they dislike me because of my race or my sexual orientation. Sometimes it's none of those things. Sometimes it may just be intrinsically you that is always the problem. And that's where I did a mindfulness minute about that. Of sometimes you got to get yourself together before you interact with other people. Until you are together, you shouldn't be engaging with nobody. You shouldn't be entangling with nobody. You shouldn't be communicating with anybody until you get you together. Because what tends to happen, Khalil just alluded to the locus of control. For me, I call it sphere of influence. We have and I use this analogy all the time. For all of us, there is a bubble that surrounds you. It's a 5x5 bubble. Pretty much the distance, your arm's distance out in front of you, up until all the way around you, it encircles you. It's invisible. You can't see it. You can't touch it. But what do bubbles do when two bubbles come together? They overlap and they become one bubble. So the people that you surround yourself with, the people that that you interact with, the people that you talk to, the people that you interact with, the people that you entangle with, they impact you and you impact them.
Right.
So they can impact you in a positive way, but they can also impact you in a negative way, and vice versa. If you spend enough time with people, you tend to pick up things that they say. You tend to think the way that they think. You tend to make jokes that are aligned with the type of the jokes that they make. You tend to pick up slang. Heck, sometimes you even pick up accents if you spend enough time with people.
Right.
So because that's how easily influenced we are as human beings. So for me, I try to surround myself with winners. And the reason I want to surround myself with winners is because winning now becomes that much easier to obtain because I see it.
You see it every day.
Versus hanging out with someone who is just complacent and happy being where they're at right now. Not understanding that where they're at right now is not the best, is not conducive to them being the best version of themselves. And for me, that's something that I espouse to my clients all the time, of being the best version of yourself. If, as I alluded to with the mathematical principle earlier, if things do not add and multiply in your life, they're subtracting and dividing out of it. So I'm always pushing people to do an evaluation of the things that add and multiply in their life. We actually will sit down and do a column, because I've had clients that have substance abuse issues going on in their life. And I'll ask them, let's do a chart. Things that add and things that subtract. So how does, and especially, I'll have across the top whatever that issue is that we're trying to overcome. But for this particular example, we'll do substance abuse. How does substance abuse add in your life? That column be blank.
Well, look, they use it as a coping skill. So, hey, it make me feel good. That's what you'll get. It made me feel good in the moment.
But then when we go to how it subtracts from your life or divides from your life, that column be running over. I've lost relationships. I've lost jobs. I've gone to jail. I've had charges. I've lost money. The column starts to add up. And so by being able to physically see benefit versus loss, people were able to realize, like, man, yeah, I gotta make something shake. Especially once they've lost something major, i.e. relationships or a family member, because people just don't want to be bothered with that anymore. But going back to my point about self-compassion, You have to be kind to yourself during this process because it is a healing process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's easier said than done to say, hey, let's change and let's move on. There's going to be hiccups. There's going to be times where you slip and fall. There's going to be times where you relapse and you go back to old behavior. But you, because you're in the process of changing, you are in the process of growing, you'll recognize like, damn, I'm tripping.
Right.
That's the old me coming back up. And that's where you will, with enough hard work, as Khalil alluded to, enough hard work, enough dedication, enough effort, you will start to realize that, the real definition of the glow up in that situation isn't proving anything to anybody. It's finally being able to feel content and hopeful about the things that lay ahead of you instead of dwelling on the things behind you. Because as I said when we first started the episode, you can't change the past. There's no magic spell. There's no special remote that allows you. There's no special remote that allows you to rewind and go back in the past.
No time.
Your past, there's none of that. All you have is the present and the future. And so in those moments, dwelling on the past, how does that serve you? And that's where, as Khalil was alluding to, coming and sitting down with a provider, regardless if that provider is a social worker or a therapist like myself, sitting down with a provider to unpack those things. Because if you do not unpack those things, they weigh you down. It's much more difficult. I can tell you from past experience in my profession, it is very difficult to run and to maneuver and to walk through life when you have a fully packed suitcase on your back versus one that has next to nothing in it. You feel free when you ain't got nothing in that bag. But when you got 50, 60, 70 pounds on your back, how much more difficult and how cumbersome it is to maneuver and walk around. It's very difficult. Now, most of us are able to manage because we've gotten to the point to where we're just accustomed, like, the Febreze commercials about people being nose blind to certain smells. You've become accustomed to something smelling a particular way so much that it doesn't even bother you that it smells this way. So you've become accustomed to walking around with a whole nother person on your back, worth of problems, worth of issues, worth of past trauma, past hurts, past pains, past disappointments, past frustrations. You've gotten so used to it that you don't even realize that you're doing certain things. You don't even realize that you're blowing up on people or killing relationships, blocking blessings, deading opportunities, because this is what you've always done. I've heard people say that all the time, and I tell people that's no excuse. This is just who I am. This is what I know. There's no excuse. There's, especially in today's society, where there's a plethora of options for getting help. There's so many resources. There's so many people. You don't even have to leave your house in order to partake in therapy.
Right.
You can partake in therapy over the internet or over your phone. So there is, like I tell people, there's no excuse for you not being the best version of yourself. There's absolutely none.
Well, look, I just had a client. We had a good discussion, right? And he was very open and candid with me. He had just gotten out of a bad relationship, and he didn't have another partner. He wasn't talking to anybody. He was kind of depressed, and he eventually went out and he talked to a female, and he got her number and started talking to her. And he said, Khalil, he said, man, I don't know. It seems like I just attract people who have problems. And so the lady was going through all sorts of stuff, just got divorced, and she was stressed out. And the gentleman said, but he's like, man, it kind of reminded me of the last relationship I just came from. And he's like, this, even when I was younger, this seems to be what I go for. I said, well, this should be something that we want to change. We don't want to repeat this cycle, right? Because how did those last relationships work out for you? Didn't work out too well, right? So we started talking, but this is something I've heard. You've heard this. There's even commercials where people say, like, I attract this type of woman or this type of man, right? No, I wouldn't say we necessarily attract them, but we look for them, right? It's actually cognizant. You might not feel it is, but it could be unconscious. Mm-hmm. But when we have, everybody plays a role, right? I know we've heard of Cartman's triangle, right? We got the rescuer, the persecutor, the victim, right? If I like fixing women, right, then I'm going to find a woman out there even if it's unconscious. I'm going to find a woman out there that has enough problems for me to fix, right?
Yeah.
But the funny part about that character trait, the reason why I want to fix her, because it makes me feel better about myself. People don't think about that, right? I get something out of fixing or trying to fix that person, but we know only God could do that anyway, right?
Yep.
No human being, right, can solve my issues, because we just told you, you have to do that work. You and your God have to do that work on yourself. So if
Mm-hmm.
I bring somebody in who I'm trying to fix, I'm trying to rescue, I'm trying to save them, and this goes for women too. Y'all want to get those men that are fixer uppers. Oh, he has so much potential, but I think I can change him. Right? There's a problem in you just saying that.
Yeah.
That's grandiose in its thinking, period. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I know you have a personality issue because you're trying to fix somebody and you're not God. Right?
Yeah.
And technically you can help people, but when does it become, all right, that you're enabling that person? Because that's when we talk about Cartman's triangle. You're actually enabling them to continue to behave like that. So when I was talking to the gentleman, when we talked about his last relationship, things got out of control. There was always something to be fixed. There was always some more drama creating, right? That's created. There was always another situation that was happening with this young lady he was with, right? And it drained him mentally. But this is what you like. This is what you look for. This is what you attract, right? There has to be some changes, because
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I
Some
might not
reframing and some relearning.
relearning, right? I might not do well in relationships like this. I don't thrive in relationships. I got to start telling myself this is not what I like. And another thing is, just because something looks good on the outside doesn't mean that the inside is clean, right? We get caught up in looks, right? Superficiality, right? I see, oh man, that's sparkling, that's shining. Whoo, she looks good, right?
Everything that glitters ain't gold.
Everything that glitters is not gold, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I get this person, I get close to this person, I get to know this person. They have a lot of baggage with them. They're scarred, they're hurt, right? They're sick. But yet I feel as if, because I've spent this time with you, right? And I've gotten close to you, it's my job to fix it. I take on an extra responsibility of being the rescuer, right? Being the fixer. Because maybe that's the role you've always played in relationships, even when you get down to your childhood, right? Or you're used to playing the victim. I need somebody to rescue me. People are always doing me wrong, right? We have to look at ourselves. That's when we have to examine some of our behaviors, right? And some of our character traits. Yeah, it might be hard to change, but in the moment, right, you could struggle with it. And yeah, we'll take some losses. All right, all right, that was a bad decision, but I've got to admit what I've done wrong, and I've got to be willing to do something different and change it. I can't stay in that same toxic environment that I've put myself in. I have to want to come out of that. So, for us, we do fall victim to some of the things that are in our nature to do, it seems like. But anybody can change. I've seen the greatest enabler stop enabling. Right. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen the worst drug addict stop using drugs. Right. I've seen the most negative person start to become positive. So we know it can be done,
Absolutely.
but you've got to be willing to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that it's important that you, and this is where, as I said before, I've said in numerous episodes about being intentional and purposeful in what you were doing. I think that one of the things that a lot of us struggle with are setting new goals. By setting new goals and creating a clear vision and being intentional about where you want yourself to go in the future, that is what is always going to it's going to point you in the right direction, but it's also going to keep you in line. It's going to allow you to recognize that this is a distraction. This is not going to benefit me in me becoming a better version of myself. This is going to be in the way. This person, these behaviors, that thought process, I need to separate myself from those things because it is not conducive to me reframing and becoming a better version of myself. If I continue to hold on to these certain situations, these certain people, this certain behavior, these certain places, it's going to keep me stuck in the past. By
Right.
setting new goals and reframing your narrative, it will allow you to transcend and elevate to another level that you otherwise would not have been able to reach on your own. And I think that for a lot of us, one of the things that you spoke to earlier was surrounding yourself with positivity. You are only going to be as great. And I tell my coworkers this all the time. I am only as great as the circle of people that I have around me.
Right.
The people around me, I surround myself with. God dang on, they are winners. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. At the end of the day, if I don't have the answer, I know one of them does. If I don't know the person, I know one of them does. They know the person who can put me in contact with another person who can get me what I need. Because at the end of the day, you have to surround yourself with the people that have either been the places you are hoping to go, or they are already there. Because that is what makes it real for you. When your hero is somebody that is far removed from you, it becomes unrealistic to do that thing. But when your hero is somebody you see every day, they're walking the things out that you want to do every day. They're showing you what right looks like. Guess what? Right and doing those things becomes that much more easier for you because you've seen somebody else do it. It becomes tangible for you. You can physically touch it. And that's where, like, for my dad started a nonprofit, I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago. And so it's geared towards, helping people who are underserved, underprovided for, and just giving back to the community. And one of the things that I applaud my dad for is the fact that for him, he's constantly going back and having conversations with young kids, helping them prepare for things like the SAT, the ACT, different things of that nature. Why? Because at the end of the day, my dad started out poor, started out impoverished. He always says, I grew up on a dirt road, in a shack, But the thing is, my dad struggled. He sacrificed. He grinded into where he got to where he is now. Being purposeful, being intentional, putting God first, others second, his self last. Those are things that open doors and created opportunities for him because he's always doing the right thing and surrounding himself with the right people. And then not only just doing that, but then throwing the rope back to be able to pull other people along too. Watching him do that. And so the thing is, these young kids see him come from the same place they came from. And by seeing him come from from the same place they came from and where he is now, it becomes real for them. I want to be like him. I'm gonna do the things. If I follow the things that he did, I'll be at that point myself. And so that is where surrounding yourselves with the right people becomes imperative, because it is. And I tell my clients this all the time. It is much harder to go through life by yourself than when you have a whole team with you. When you have to imagine lifting 100 pounds, most of us who are average adult size can lift 100 pounds very, with moderate or some difficulty. Just imagine how much more easier it is to lift 100 pounds when you got 4 people.
Sure.
When you have 3 people, 6 people, 10 people, that's less weight that everyone has to lift at that point. So when you are surrounding yourself with the right people, they will lift you up. They will help you carry that weight. They will keep you focused. They will keep you on task. They will keep you motivated. And most importantly, this is the most important thing, they will keep you accountable. For a lot of us, especially as adults, we run from accountability. My God, do we run from accountability? We don't want to be told that, hey, I'm not always right, or that is our fault, or we should have done better, or we should have thought this out better. We shuck and jive and jug and finesse to avoid accountability. But the problem with avoiding accountability is it limits. It puts a cap, it puts a ceiling, it puts a roof over your ability to grow. By being able to be accountable, not only to yourself, but to others around you, it allows you to be able to recognize that you don't always have all the answers, that everything that you do is not ordained by the Lord. And so by being accountable, guess what? You can learn, like, oh, snap, I messed up right here, and this is where I messed up at.
Well, but that's human nature, right? We don't naturally want to go out there and say, man, I did something wrong, or man, I didn't think this through, or you know what, I should have definitely called and got some advice before I decided to sign up for this or do that, right? That's natural because there's some embarrassment by it, right? Remember, I
Mm-hmm.
was talking earlier about the humility. It's natural for people not to want to take accountability because it's easier to look for somebody to blame, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we take about accountability, we have to look at ourselves, right? But we talked about this earlier, right? The truth will make you free. It'll set you free, depending
Mm-hmm.
if you're a biblical scholar or not, right? Make or set, right? In the Greek, but it will free you because once I admit, all right, I didn't make a good choice. I can look back at that now. Hindsight's 2020. I look back, that wasn't a good choice. I admit I did that. Well, that's when I can move forward, right? So when we were talking about the past and locking people, it locks you in, right? And it narrows your vision down because you're stuck, right? But when you can admit, all right, that didn't go right. You know what? Yeah, I drew a bad card. The situation wasn't in my favor.
Or
Yes,
that was dumb.
or that was dumb. I made a bad choice, or yes, that person might have taken advantage of me at that time, right? But I'm not going to allow that decision making, the choice, or even what I was born into to dictate to what I'm going to do now moving forward, right? We can't allow that. And there's no justification in that. I've heard people tell me, they've had a terrible childhood, didn't have enough to eat, didn't have nowhere to sleep, all right, didn't have good parents, but we still are not going to allow that to justify why we're not doing something now. Because
While we're
now,
not living out our destiny.
why we're not living out our destiny, right? Now is not back then. So when you ask people, well, yeah, that was back then, and that was horrible, because I can be empathetic, right? That was horrible for you, right? But why are we doing some of the same things we saw that we didn't want for our kids? Why are we doing that now? Why are we allowing that cycle to repeat itself? Why aren't we being transcendent, right? Why aren't we doing some things to transcend what was going on before? Why aren't we moving forward, right? First, the lack of accountability, right? Because what happened in the past might have been your parents' fault, true, right? But what's happening now is yours. You got to own that. I want to move. I want to move forward. I don't want to live like that. I didn't like it, right? So why am I continuing to dwell in that, right? It's up to me to move forward. It's up to me to make the right decisions, right? Um, I'm very optimistic about the future when it comes to doing the right thing for people who take accountability, right? People who are willing and honest and open and say, "Hey, I want to do." I'm very optimistic when someone comes into my private practice and they say, "Well, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. I've had enough of this." Right? I'm ready to break the cycle. I'm ready to change. I don't want to live like the way I was living before. I know that it wasn't right. Those are the people that I know they're willing to take advice. They're willing to humble themselves and say, "All right, I don't have all the answers. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I need help." Those are the people that I gravitate towards because I know they've had enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know how things turn out when I do things my way. I'm ready to give my will up, right? And those are the people I help when it comes to the substance abuse, when it comes to relational issues, when it comes to previous trauma. Those are people that I want to help. Not that I'm biased, right? But those are people I know that are ready. I'm optimistic about those people,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the people that come in and they don't want to acknowledge where they were wrong. They're blaming everything. They won't take accountability. Everything is somebody else's fault. Those are the people that it takes me longer to get through because I have to let them see that, hey, no matter what happened in the past, whose fault it was, what are you going to do now? And what are you willing to do? Let's change that. It's not what are you going to do now? What are you willing to do?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, I think that, by being willing to take that accountability is what is going to initially open the door. It's going to be able to, put you on the right path. That's the, like we talk about, the first step to dealing with the problem is to acknowledge you have a problem.
Right.
By being able to be accountable, being willing to say, hey, sometimes it's me, I screwed that up right there. I should have listened, should have did this, I should have did that. That is where it allows you to kind of start to unpack those things and start to get those things up off of you. The mistake that I think that for a lot of us that we make is the is that part, is the lack of accountability. And the lack of accountability, the lack of understanding, because we'll put that on there too, the lack of understanding, and that's where sitting down with the provider to get to the root cause of things, because until you get the root, the weed is just going to keep growing back. It's not until you use something that's going to kill all the way down to the root that problem is going to finally die and wither off. But as long as you allow that root to stay there, you can take the head off the plant all you want to. It's just going to grow back.
Keep growing back.
And
right.
So your problems are the same way. Your past is the same way until you get to the root cause of the issue, the root cause of the trauma, the root cause of the pain, the root cause of the frustration, the anger, the animosity. You are going to allow it to just grow back every single time. When you cut your grass, it looks great when you freshly cut it, but give it a week. Guess what? That grass grows right on back.
Right.
So, because again, the root is still there. The root for the grass is still present. It's not until you eliminate all the whole root system that the grass does not grow back. Your problems are the same way. Your past is the same way. Until you address the root cause of the past, unpack it and process it. Keyword here, process it. Because you need to understand why you are feeling the way that it's one thing to feel something, but it's another thing to understand why you feel the way that you feel, or why you are experiencing things the way that you're experiencing things. It's not until you do that you will eventually be able to get past whatever you are holding on from your past. But we're going to end the conversation there. This is Try Not to Overthink It, signing out. I'm RJ.
I'm Khalil.
If you like what you heard, we ask, and you like what you saw, we ask that you like, share, subscribe, turn your notifications on, hit that subscription button, because every little bit helps. Anybody that's a part of the tribe already, we love you. We appreciate you. Anybody that would like to join the tribe, please hit that subscribe button and be a part of the conversations with us. Grow with us as we grow, because we're trying to get these messages out to as many people as we can. Please make sure you share this message as well. If you would rather listen to us instead of watch us, I don't know why you would, because we're some very good looking people. My mommy and daddy made this. If you would prefer to listen to us, we can be found on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Audible, pretty much anywhere you can get your audio files, we can be located. If you'd like to support us even further, please check us out on Instagram and on TikTok. The links will be down below. But this is us signing out.
Leave messages, because when we get your messages on Instagram, TikTok, we see your comments.
Yes.
And if you have a topic you want us to discuss, we will discuss it, please.
Absolutely. But this is us signing out, and we will catch you next time. Peace.